Hi, everybody. We're going to talk about more viewability as if you guys haven't had enough from Peter's talk a little bit earlier. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Phil Schrader. I'm the CEO and CFO of Gumgum. For everybody who doesn't or isn't aware of Gumgum, there was one sheet, I believe, on your chairs this morning. But basically what we did was we created digital in-image advertising back in 2008. What we did was we said, where is the most real estate on a web page that is not being maximized, both for publishers to drive additional revenue and also in which is an opportunity for brands and marketers and agencies to be able to deliver a really relevant message on that image where everybody is actually viewing that content. So as we talk about viewability, I actually gave a presentation last year back in February at the same conference. And so it's kind of what has happened over the last year, what are we expecting this year, and what does it actually mean, and how is it actually practically implemented based on our experiences at Gumgum, where we take a very hard line and are really focused on it. And then what are the challenges, and what can we expect? So as you guys may know already, that 54% of ads right now are not viewable, right? And why is that an important piece of information? Well, one, when you look at the media spectrum and how advertisers and brands and agencies are buying, when they buy traditional, digital was the only way that it was an impression by impression type model. Everything else was based on the opportunity to see what their advertising was. So now that digital is bringing it full circle and talking about the ability to have a viewable impression, we're level setting the playing field, and we're allowing marketers and agencies to truly look at an effective ROI across all of their media spend, which is key. But where that takes it a step further is, because it's digital, there's so much more insight, there's so much more data, and there's so much more additional work that needs to be done post just a viewable impression, and taking it a little bit further. And that expectation does fall on us digitally because we have access to so much of that information. We know it's a $10 billion problem. That's where it's coming from. You have clients and you have marketers saying, what have I been spending my money on if my ad hasn't even had the opportunity to be seen? We know last year that the MRC lifted the advisory and actually put a stake in the ground on the definition, which we'll talk about. We also know over the course of the last year that although there's a standard by the MRC, from my end at Gumgum, we're seeing agencies say, that's great that you've established that standard. However, we want this standard. We're going to do it this way. We're going to look at it this way. Kind of throwing the standard a little bit to the waistline and then forcing partners like ourselves to address to our clients and meet the needs of what they think is important from viewable impressions, which makes that very challenging. And then process. We all hear so much about programmatic, and we're all trying to get very efficient, and we want to eliminate paper pushing. We want to eliminate process. We already know agencies are squeezed. They're looking for ways to maximize and spend their clients' dollars stronger and better and eliminate some of these operating inefficiencies. But yet, with viewable coming into the wake right now so aggressively, it's causing continued disruption and a lot of challenges that are increasingly causing additional process to be layered on. So there's still a lot of work. So just the viewability update really quickly on what happened last year. MRC basically approved the definition in 2014 on display. 50% of the pixels in view for 1 second. Video in June of 2014. In-view video for 2 seconds, 50% in view. They rolled out their viewability implementation guideline in 2014 in October. And then just this year, basically the ANA and 4As and IAB are pushing to establish viewable impressions as the standard. I know Peter talked a little bit from Comcast earlier and did reference that the IAB has driven a hard line on where they think we should be in 2015. They basically have gone on record and said 100% viewable is not an option. That's not really where we're at due to a lot of technical limitations. So their target is 70%. And they target 70% and say to their marketers and to their agencies, that's what you should be aspiring to achieve at this point as we continue to work through the technology challenges that we have in getting to that 100% viewable benchmark. So what are some of the challenges? Vendor selection, ad delivery, measurement, client education, billing methodology, and pricing impact. So from a practical standpoint, we all know we need to be able to transact on viewable impressions. We all know that a marketer needs to have comfort in knowing that their display advertising, their video advertising digitally has an opportunity to be seen. But it arises all of these challenges. With the MRC, there was a multitude of preferred vendors and accredited vendors that you select. Well, when you're at Gumgum and you work with all of the different agencies, all of the major clients, P&G, Unilever, Mindshare, Group M, and you start to look at the vendor selection, they're assigning who they think is going to work best for them, whether that be IAS, whether that be Moat or ComScore or Double Verify, and then they come to a partner like us and say, you need to be able to use this partner, you need to be able to use that partner, we're going to use this partner. And so on our end, we've had to establish direct relationships with the product teams at each and every single one of these accredited vendors to make sure that our solution is registering based on how they're implementing a viewable impression and basing that calculation, right? That's a lot of work. And when you do what we do in image advertising, which is a non-standard high-impact unit, the fluctuation and the challenges are even greater. One of the reasons there's not 100% viewable ability right now is because things like page takeovers, custom creative ad units are very difficult to kind of hone in and measure on truly viewable versus a standard IAB ad. So for us, it was working with all of those product teams to make sure that they were able to identify how our ad is rendering and how it's being registered as viewable. And that took all of 2014. So as 2014 laid a lot of foundation, it really put a lot of onus on partners and the trusted partners that the marketers and agencies are working with to step in and really work with them and make sure that we're able to give and offer the benchmarks that they're looking to hit, even though we're ultimately offering a custom creative ad format. Ad delivery, pricing, measurement, all of these continue to be challenges. Let's take pricing, for example. So, we're historically billing off of impressions served, right? An impression served, a pixel fires, the impression serves, and you look at your third-party reporting, and that's what you'd bill off of. Well, now there's the definition of a viewable impression, and you have a Moat or an IAS registering what that viewable impression is. And they're coming up with a percentage to say how much of your impressions were in view. So let's say 80% of your impressions are in view. Well, that sounds easy, but how do you actually put that into practice? So for us, there's now, of course, 3 or 4 different ways that the agencies are looking for you as a partner to be able to calculate that and work with them on it. One way is we served 1 million impressions, and Moat said our viewability was 85%. So we take 85% of 1 million impressions, and that's what your viewable impression base is. That's actually the preferred method. That's actually a method Moat actually supports. Now, Moat also, for example, is going to report a number called viewable impressions on their reporting back to the agency. But their viewable impression number is based off of the impressions that they've been able to identify. Now, what does that mean? Well, your third-party ad server is actually registering an impression when a pixel fires. But a Moat or a partner of the, one of the viewable partners is registering a baseline impression off of JavaScript code that's required to actually when it renders. That's creating a delta right from the base. So where I saw the third-party server said I ran 1 million, Moat might be saying you only ran 900,000. And then of those 900,000, 80%. So you can see that there's a huge swing in different methodologies. So an agency might come to you and say, we want to bill off the viewable impression Moat had. One agency might say, we want you to apply this percentage to the overall campaign. And so it gets very tricky. And every agency is establishing different ways of doing it. And so when you're a partner, you need to be able to adapt and be flexible enough to work with those different agencies to be able to accommodate and really also help educate. Part of it is client education. That's still a constant challenge because with this new viewability component, which we hold our hat on, we transact on viewability all the time. We have preferred rates on viewability and VCPM. We think it's really critical, and it speaks very closely to what we do. However, the clients still need to be educated because now, where you have 54% of the ads not even being seen, 9 months later, the IAB is saying it has to be at 70%, it puts all the publishers and everybody having to revamp and relook at all of those numbers across all of these partners and get to that threshold. And if they can't, they're cut. Or if they can, there might be a price adjustment that actually has to be passed on to the client and educating them on why your $10 CPM went to a $12 CPM and basically say, well, your $10 was off of ads that were never being seen, and then saying, well, now it's 12, but we'll make sure your ads are seen, is a challenging conversation for agencies to have with clients. It's not an easy one. So you have to find partners that have very slight impact to pricing because of high viewability benchmarks, so it weathers that storm a lot easier. And as I mentioned, the billing methodology. It's a huge challenge. You get managed IOs all the time, impression-based IOs. Now there's VCPM IOs. Now there's percentages allocated to these different campaigns. And so from an infrastructure standpoint, it's now you have an IO, and you used to just have to look at, did I hit the third-party delivery on impressions based off of price? But now you have multiple different ways that pricing is showing up on an IO. You have different multiple methods on how to calculate that. So then to actually roll that into your billing process as a partner like us has taken a lot of adjustment. And so 2014 was a huge learning experience for everybody in the industry to really chase being up to speed to be able to provide that back to the agencies and the marketers. And so all of these challenges continue to be a huge issue in 2015. So 2015, even the IAB says, is a year of transition. It's a year of education. It's a year of really working with the agencies and the marketers to really get a sense of what they're looking for, but also it's a year to really try to get everybody back on the same page of how the standardization is really key to ultimately be successful. When the MRC launches that say 50% of the ad needs to be in view for 1 second, and then right out of the bat, Group M goes and says, well, for us it has to be 100% in view for a second, or the video has to play for 50% of the time and have a video completion of 50% to count, that immediately kind of undercuts what the MRC has already said. And then that creates a whole new product that that third party has to build. So now when we're launching a campaign with Group M, we need to be at 100% viewable benchmark and actually measure it differently with a different percentage than what we would with another agency that's using the MRC standard. So as much as we know this is where we need to go, it's still a ton of education, and the business opportunities and the agencies and the partners are looking at ways to use this as leverage to kind of push a further agenda on how they can better drive and use your money through viewability versus just using the initial standard. So our position is we currently transact on VCPM. We think it's really important. Our rates are VCPM rates as well as CPM rates. We've noticed that in Q1 versus all of last year, 30% of all of our buys in Q1 were all off of VCPM. Our partners like Unilever and P&G are requiring our rate cards to be on VCPM, and so it's a huge initiative. So it's something that we have to adapt and adjust to and make sure that our technology and our offering supports that initiative. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to participate in delivering our awesome results because we can't meet this one standard. We've partnered with IAS, Moat, ComScore, and DoubleVerify, and I can tell you all 4 of them do things differently. I can also tell you that all 4 of them, one campaign on IAS might say your viewability is 85%, and then one campaign might say it's 72%, and then one might say 91%. So you're kind of all over the place. There is not enough of consistency across how they're able to measure to really garner one way to actually report. So depending on the partner is going to be dependent upon what the performance is they actually see based on that individual partner's methodology. So Gumgum is fortunate in that we overlay an ad on a photo that's contextually relevant. So it's obviously always in view, not 100% in view, because nothing's 100% in view, but it's on the content that's actually in view. Now, what we're proposing and what we're doing a lot with our clients is talking about, that's great that we're able to say we have a viewable impression. Like, that's amazing. We need to do that. We need to check that box. But if I'm looking at a viewable impression overlaid on a photo on that piece of content, and then you look at the rectangle or the leaderboard, those are being ignored. And even if that rectangle is also viewable by the standard of a definition, as well as our in-image ad, what's actually creating the engagement and where are you actually consuming? So studies on viewability have really focused a lot on the type of content is garnering stronger viewability results, but then it's also, because it's in view and seen in a piece of content that's being consumed, the post-action and the post-interaction with your brand and what's happening, clicks, searches, product pages are increasing, and we've seen a 10x increase in engagement metrics. So for us, it's in view, that's great, but it's what's happening and how are you engaging with this brand's message. And that's the key takeaway. It has to go beyond just that you're registering a viewable impression. That is the baseline, but we have enough insight and we have enough data to show what is happening after that ad has been exposed to a user in content that they're consuming. And then it's the agency and brand adoption. Our focus has been on getting the agencies and the marketers adopted into our methodologies, adopted into that unit, and really providing them the third-party studies to support that these engagement metrics after a viewable impression has launched is actually translating into a better ROI for them. So here's just some metrics around what your industry is seeing and kind of where we perform. We've actually worked, as I mentioned, with all of the partners to increase and focus on driving the highest viewability out there, which has been really successful for us. and allow us to hold an 82% average, which has been very lucrative to a lot of our partners and agencies. And so where are we headed in 2015? I like this fingerprint that integral ad science kind of references. You look at the bolder ones are what everybody's really focusing on, and you probably already know. Programmatic, viewability, mobile, attribution. Well, when you look at those large-scale items, programmatic, viewability, and mobile, there are all challenges there. We're buying programmatic, but you can't buy a VCPM on programmatic. You can layer in a partner, but you can't do a VCPM necessarily through programmatic. Mobile, there's only a handful of the partners that actually register viewability metrics on mobile. Some of them aren't even able to support a viewability metric on mobile, but that's where a lot of the money is being spent. So we have a lot of challenges that we have to overcome. So some key takeaways is we need to try to get back to standardizing measurement and tracking, but that's not going to happen this year. So partners like Gumgum, companies like Gumgum, we really need to be flexible. We really need to adapt. We need to help educate, and we need to work with whatever that agency or that marketer deems important and find a way to adjust to that in the meantime. We have to understand that viewability is a first step, but it's not the solution. We should all be viewable. That's key. We all get that. But what happens after? All viewable ads are not equal. They do not equal the same performance. So it's aligning yourself with the content and where the user is focusing their attention and where they're actually getting the brand recognition and affinity for what the messaging is that that brand's trying to bring on that important piece of content. And be ready for change and adapt to it. I can't stress that enough. We sit in our office all the time, and every other day it's something new around viewability that we have to adjust to and adopt, and you have to. You have to be nimble, and you have to adjust. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind, and you are going to lose the business. And as I mentioned, mobile, programmatic, and viewability are in a huge collision course. We need to start to figure that out. It's great that we can do desktop viewability, but we need to figure out how to do it programmatically. We need to be able to measure it on mobile. Two huge initiatives that are a huge focus, obviously, of brands and marketers as they look to be more adaptable, more fluid, and being able to adjust their budgets programmatically in real time, as well as mobile, as where obviously the consumption is shifting dramatically and where most people are spending their time. So that's that. I'm a minute over, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Phil. That's great. We don't have time for questions, but I know you're going to be around.
Yeah, I'll be around too, and then there's about 4 other Gumgummers floating around too, so find us if you have any questions.
Right.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, we're going to take a quick coffee break.